Hi, everybody. I'm Rod, and welcome to the Stormcrow Overland podcast, where we talk about overlanding, road tripping, camping, and just generally enjoying life. On this episode, we're going to talk about how I kind of got into overlanding, and at the end, we're going to talk about some of my overland inspirations. Getting into how I got into overlanding as a kid, I loved road trips. Both my parents were real big on getting out and doing things. My mom was more of travel and experiencing things, and go to new places. Whereas my dad was more, he loved outdoors. He was real self-reliant, and also he was big into cars and motorcycles and stuff like that. So it's kind of easy to see how those two would lead into kind of overlanding. I also, growing up, loved watching the Dakar Rally, watching the Camel Trophy with the old Land Cruisers and stuff. Loved all that. So it was always kind of there in the back of my head, even before I really even knew what the term overlanding was. But yeah, growing up with my parents, we'd go on crazy road trips to, my dad would, hey, we bought a broke down car that we got to bring back from Arizona, and we lived in southern Texas. So we're gonna drive a couple of days and stop and see random things just to go pick this car up. My mom was the same way. We'd hop in the car and okay, well we're gonna drive to Colorado and we're gonna go whitewater rafting and I'd be like, all right, Mom, well where are we gonna stay tonight? And she'd be like, I don't know, we'll find somewhere. So she had definitely had that adventurous and go out and experience things side. A lot of the my love for the outdoors really kicked in when I was stationed in Alaska. I was in the military. I was stationed up in Alaska, got to see the mountains and stuff, and being from the Gulf Coast of Texas, that was way different. I wasn't used to seeing mountains anywhere. Where I came from was pretty flat. Seeing mountains, especially mountains with snow on them, just blew my mind. And then while I was up there, the unit I supported was going to be going up. They were going to fly up Denali Mountain, land on Talkeetna Glacier to do high altitude rescue training because they were the ones that got tasked to rescue climbers on Denali every year, and they needed someone to go with them that did my job. So I got to go with them, and then got to fly up on a helicopter, fly up the largest mountain in North America. Got to land on a glacier, and I was instantly hooked. I knew I needed to spend more time out and about, especially around mountains. There's just something special about them. The hook got driven in a little deeper when I left Alaska. I got transferred from Alaska down to Oklahoma, and I decided to drive. Love road trips. Sounded like a blast. I mean, 2 weeks on the road of getting a paycheck just to drive. Only thing was I did it in the winter, and my wife and kid flew down. They really weren't looking forward to that, and it was nice. My kid got to go and find school, and my wife went and started looking for work and getting the house set up, and I jumped in the car and drove. Driving through parts of Canada where I might see one or two cars all day, and I had never been anywhere that remote before. I'd never been trapped in my own thoughts for that long, and it was eye-opening. It just was amazing. I knew I needed to get out and do more things like that, but I didn't quite understand how, or it hadn't all clicked just yet. Once I got to Oklahoma, I started doing some little minor adventures. I had a little F-150 I'd take out, little trips here and there, a little bit of camping, nothing crazy. I grew up riding dirt bikes, so I was like, I love watching Dakar Rally and stuff like that. I'm like, I'll get an adventure bike. And I did. Had an adventure bike for a couple of years, loved it, would run around. But I got to the point that I would start taking it places that I probably should have had a real dirt bike, not a full-size 500, 600-pound adventure bike. And I started worrying, because I mainly go out by myself, that I was going to crash and break my leg and be trapped in the middle of nowhere and no one would be able to find me. And it just started to sound like not the best idea. So I ended up selling it. And then for a couple of years, it just kind of existed. Didn't really have a plan, or didn't have anything overlandy going on. And then something kind of terrible happened. My dad passed away, and he had been building a fourth gen 4Runner. He was building an overland rig, even though he would have never called it overlanding. I don't even know if he actually knew that word. He really wanted a four-wheel drive V8 4Runner, but he didn't like the all-wheel drive that the V8 4Runners came with. So he got a salvage title 2-wheel drive V8 4th gen and swapped in a transfer case out of an FJ Cruiser, so he would have traditional selectable 4-wheel drive, a regular 4-wheel drive transfer case. Put on some long tube headers on it. He put a drawer system in the back. He put a fridge slide in the back. His plan was to allow him to pull a small trailer and not have to worry about if they were out in a dirt road and it rained overnight and they got muddy. He wanted to be able to make sure that he could get out with the travel trailer. But after he passed away, I ended up with it, and I love it. It's an amazing vehicle. And as much as I love it, obviously I would trade it for him any day of the week without blinking. But it is nice to go out and to go on trips with his vehicle and kind of know he's there with me, and I get to work on it with tools he gave me as a kid. I go out and I take pictures in it or with it, and I know he's there, and I'm using the camera that was my grandfather's. It's amazing how it all kind of comes together. And I've been lucky enough that I've lifted a little bit more. I've got, done little things through it here and there, put a bumper and a winch on it. I've been lucky enough to take it to Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Kansas, Texas, and I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. I've got plenty of plans to go some more places. So look forward to some content about that coming up later. Some of the things that, since I've gotten into overlanding and learned more about it, some of the people that have really inspired me. The first would have to be Scott Brady from Overland Journal. Everybody's heard of Overland Journal. Everybody knows Scott Brady, but what really struck me is his mindset. I'm a gear guy. I can go down a gear rabbit hole bad, but for me, he reminds me it's not about the stuff. It's not even about the destination. It's about the journey. It's about the experiences. It's about the culture and the people, the food. It's the everything of the trip. It's not the stuff you're using. It's not even where you're going. It's just the journey. And really have to focus on that sometimes because, like I said, I'm a gear guy. The other one that's always been a big inspiration, Clay Croft from X Overland. They make unbelievable content. I'm sure if you're watching this or listening to this, I'm sure you've seen their stuff. If you haven't for some reason, go watch some of X Overland stuff. Go see some of their pictures. Watch some of their videos. They do an amazing job of capturing their trips, capturing these amazing locations. And I can't watch any of their stuff without instantly wanting to go there. Just seeing what they're doing and the scenery and everything. It's just so amazing. Finally, there was another, he's an adventure motorcycle guy that I started reading his books. His name's Sam Manicum. He's got a couple of books, Into Africa, Under Asian Skies, Distant Suns, Tortillas to Totems, and I believe he's got a 5th book out now that I haven't read yet, but I need to get on that. He was an interesting guy, and I kind of connect with him a little bit. He felt a little unfulfilled in his life, and he wanted to do something different, so he went and bought a BMW GS motorcycle, used, didn't know what he was doing. I don't think he'd ever even ridden a motorcycle at that point. Bought this bike, sold everything he owned, and rode to Africa. And rode from England all the way through Africa. And he didn't know what he was doing. He had no clue. I mean, he admits he didn't know what he was doing. And that led to some of the greatest adventures he had. He just went out there, did it, experienced it. And his attitude of when things go wrong, the way he can see the positive in it, the way he can go, man, this might suck right now, but it'll make a great story later. Just the way he can roll with the punches. It's a big inspiration. It's something I have to kind of remind myself sometimes that's what I want to be like. I want to do that. I want to not let things bother me. I want to see the good in everything. So those are some of the different things that have kind of inspired me. It's kind of how I got into overlanding. I really appreciate you joining me for this first ever Stormcrow Overland podcast. So if you liked what you saw or heard today, look us up. If you're listening to the podcast, we also put the recording up on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, we also have the podcast out just as an audio version, so you can listen to that. You can find us on YouTube at Stormcrow Overland. We're also on Instagram at Stormcrow Overland. Would love for you to like or subscribe on either one of those. Would like to build a community of like-minded individuals so we can all try to learn from each other. And last, if you're interested in what we have to offer here, I would love if you could give us a rate and review on Apple iTunes or wherever you have found the podcast. And then finally, thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes it takes getting lost to really find yourself. Thanks.